Hi everyone. So I am interested in signs that or symbols that express authority relations. Here I'm thinking about someone wearing a crown or like a captain's hat or like old-timey tu and boo or like big elaborate clothes or for an even more extreme example, dragon clothes that only like the emperor of the Qing dynasty or in Imperial China was allowed to wear. Um, I'm also thinking about things like castles and hills. I'm thinking about like standing on podiums. This person is jumping, which makes it even more um, more salient. And then like when you're thinking about like there can also be, like rooms that are set up to like highlight some person as the highest authority in the room in some sense. Like this is the Budapest Parliament, and I didn't pick the best color for this, but the person like that is obviously in the center of attention is the sort of like authority figure. Um, so I'm interested broadly in these types of examples, these types of signs. And these are what Alan Fiske calls examples of conformations for authority ranking relations in his theory of social relation models. Authority ranking relations are about positioning members of a social body in a hierarchy of sorts, where this is like the highest authority. Um, it, Now it doesn't, it's like you can be very permissive about what the requirements are for authority. It doesn't have to be like a tyrannical authority, obviously. For instance, like in our class context, Sam might be said to be the authority figure, whether he wants it or not, in guiding us through the material. Um, yeah. And I'll focus in talking, and I'm very much focusing in the beginning of thinking of this in signs that mark the top of the sort of authority hierarchy, um, and hoping that it I won't have too much trouble if I ever want to continue working on this to flip this to the rest of the authority hierarchy, or it might just like naturally expand to it. We're seeing where you're going. Now, I think that tokens of all the signs I've mentioned above are signs for these kinds of relations. They mark some member of a particular social body as having authority over others. Some of these may be taken as cues for power, like some of these signs might just be like directly cueing power. Um, for instance, like being able to afford big silken garments that are like made out of gold thread, as the dragon robes were, or like you can think of any painting of an old-timey like Renaissance medieval king. They're like wearing like massive silken clothes. Like that was really expensive at the time, and so being able to afford it probably meant that you had a lot of power. Um, or being able to like institute a mandate that only you can wear these clothes, as is for the dragon robes, is a pretty strong proof of power. And I'm going to set these examples for aside. They'll still be in the background, but I'm going to try to um, separate the like those like more direct cues for power from the signs that I'm considering. Now, Fisk takes the meanings of signs indicating authority relation have like important iconic component in representing orders of magnitude. Like I'm gonna go back to my images. Authority figures are like literally set higher up. Like you think this person wearing a throne, they're literally like made to look bigger than. Um, they're literally made to appear. I mean, not literally. Um, they like the signs make the authority figure bigger than the rest. They make them shinier than the rest. They make them um, like seem like as less in quantity than the rest through these signs of authority. And in a nomenclature, this would be part of the content side of the story. And maybe the story has something to do with orders of magnitude. And there's also like symbolic components that have to do with authority signs as well. Like for instance, like I was thinking of like the smallest child in the class wearing like a paper crown in the game. Um, the symbol is like not making this child like bigger than the rest. It's not like some shiny golden thing, but rather like it marks them as the authority in any particular game that they're playing, because there's like this symbolic component to those, right? whatever rules these are that imbue these sign types with meanings, they are rules about the type. And we are concerned in this class with indexicality, which, as we have been thinking about and theorizing, are rules about the tokens. These are rules that are context dependent and picking out the respective bits of meaning, um, or the targets. So next question is, how can we talk about the indexical components of these signs? An easy first pass is that there is an indexical rule tagging like the wearer of the sign as the authority figure. And for non-linguistic examples, this is pretty obvious. Like it's the person that is wearing the garment, it's the person that lives in the castle, or the people that live in the castle, it's the person standing on the podium. But then like for non-linguistic, like pronoun examples, a little bit harder. But you can still say like, hey, for vous type pronouns, it's the person addressed with the sign. Um, Done. It's the wearer of the sign. But that can't be the whole story because having authority is a relation of property. For it to be accurate or true that some person has authority, there has to be something that he or she or they have authority over. To illustrate this point, like you can think about the deposed king. They might still wear the crown as this king is walked to the gallows, but that person no longer has authority. The sign as like marking authority is inaccurate because there's like nobody that views him as an authority. He doesn't have any like authoritative power over others. Um, so maybe we need to think about, we've thought about this part, but we need to think about other indexical rules tagging these people as well. So tagging some meaning of follower or underling to the social bodies that the wearer has authority over, or the social particulars. Now, this indexical rule is not tagging whoever else witnesses a sign. It cannot be that simple. We can't just go with hearer or witness because, for instance, like a tokening of some authority sign might express authority over some social bodies that never see it. Like someone might never see the people, like some villagers in the village under the castle might never see the king or the count that lives up there. And might still be under their authority. And then also another like counterexample to this idea is that if like a bunch of kings went and gathered together in some summit, the kings like don't have authority over each other, even though they can see each other's crowns. Like about, thinking about like crowns is I feel the best way to illustrate the things that I'm thinking about. It's simple. Um, and so with what I've said, we have two things to consider that needs to be part of like the indexical components or seem to need to be part of the indexical components of these types of signs. One of them is uh, who the authority figure is. Um, sorry for the horrible handwriting. And then the other thing is like who do they have authority over? Okay. Um, the first concern should be pretty easy to come over, it seems. The second might be more complicated and will probably require a lot more fine-tuning for each particular sign type. That's my feeling. But I'd like to add a third consideration, which might make figuring out the second one, maybe even the first one, a little easier. We also need to say something about what social body this like sign expresses a relational structure about. Like what social group it's organizing or communicating some hierarchical organization. Like we need to like communicate who all of this is. And like allegedly there's going to be some people or some other groups that are going to fall outside of the authority of this person. But the fact that there are such people doesn't mean that the sign is accurate, right? Um, so right. And then for kings, we can think of the social body being like kingdoms. And then when you have like employees that are wearing like mostly wearing vests, and then there's a couple of that are wearing blazers, you can think like, oh, the authority of the people, like the people wearing blazers have authority over, or like this like structure like encompasses all of the employees of the store and like they're organized hierarchically, or that organization is communicated through their garments, what they're wearing. Um, And then my main thought is that for any given authority relation sign, it's going to index some component in all three of these categories. And there might be like some particular indexical rule for each one, tagging onto or like bestowing them with particular aspects of or particular contents upon these components. And so I've been doing a little bit more thinking about this, and I've come across like two observations that might help me begin to think about what these rules are, or how to maybe generalize these rules. Um, so one thing is that signs of authority seem to tend to set the authority figure apart from the people that they have authority over. The use of the sign is limited to the authority figure. Like not everybody can be standing on this podium. It's just the authority figure that can be standing on that podium. Um, and then this gets weird in some like cases when you think about like, for example, like you have a room of all equally standing authority figures, and then some inferior walks in, like the person singled out are not the authority figures, but the person that walks in. Yeah. But still, even then, even though there's this similarity or this like marking of difference, there is still tend to be some similarity between the authority figure and then the people that they have authority over. So that may help with the rule of social body of like figuring out what the social group is. Um, for instance, like the jacket wearing clerk has authority over other people that are wearing the same or similar uniform, just like without the jacket. And I've got some other thoughts that I'm not going to add about that because I am guessing that I've been speaking for a really long time. Okay, so where do I go with this? Well, or what would I like to hear some thoughts about? I've been very much working well within Sam's framework when thinking about this. This is probably because it's a framework that is most tailored to non-linguistic examples and the one that Sam has been pushing. And I like it. Um, and I'm particularly interested in non-linguistic examples. And I need to think a little bit about how other frameworks might tackle or try to help out with my story, if only to use them as foils, at least. And then I also might benefit from getting some central example, and I am inclined towards crowns and kings because they're easy to talk about. But I'm worried that might be too like too much idealization there. I also need to start thinking about how to bring in more formal aspects. And also, I need to think about some sort of like structure for these thoughts and what is achievable in a term paper and what isn't. Um, that said, thank you so much for listening. I am looking forward to hearing your thoughts. This has been a fun little presentation to put together. Okay, bye.